he wakes to the crack of a whip. Not punishment, just his wake-up call. The iron shackle around his ankle has rubbed his skin raw, creating a permanent bracelet of scar tissue. He's 15 years old, and he has been property for 3 years. Welcome to the birthplace of democracy. His name was once spoken with love by his mother in their small village in Messenia, but you don't know the real story yet, because what you've been told about ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and civilization, it's all a carefully constructed myth that conveniently omits one crucial detail. This glorious society was built on the backs of human beings who were bought, sold, and used like living tools. Today, we're going to walk through a day in the life of Alexios, a male slave in classical Athens. And I need to warn you, this isn't going to be comfortable, because the truth about slavery in ancient Greece is far more brutal, far more systematic, and far more depraved than you've ever known. His body aches as he rises from the straw mattress that he shares with 2 other boys. The chain is just long enough to let him work, but short enough to remind him that freedom is always exactly 3 feet away and completely impossible. You see, slavery in ancient Greece wasn't some distant, abstract concept. According to modern estimates based on census data and archaeological evidence, between 80,000 to 100,000 people were enslaved in Athens alone during the 5th century BCE. That's roughly 1 in every 4 human beings living in the city. 1 in 4. But here's what makes Greek slavery particularly insidious. It wasn't based on race or ethnicity like the slavery you might be familiar with from American history. Greeks enslaved other Greeks with the same casual efficiency. They enslaved Thracians, Scythians, or Persians. Skin color didn't matter. Previous social status didn't matter. What mattered was that someone had been conquered, captured, or sold. Alexios splashes cold water on his face from a clay basin. The water is brown and tastes of metal, but it's all he's allowed. As he washes, he catches a glimpse of his reflection in the murky surface. The boy staring back at him has hollow cheeks and eyes that look decades older than his 15 years. Bruises bloom purple and yellow across his ribs like some grotesque flower, a reminder of yesterday's lesson in obedience. Alexios's first job of the day is to accompany his master, Cleomenes, to the agora. Not as a companion, slaves don't have companions, but as a pack animal. The leather satchel strapped to his back contains his master's money, contracts, and lunch. He is, quite literally, a walking storage unit. The Athenian agora is a marvel of civilization, they say. Marble columns reach towards the heavens, decorated with intricate carvings of gods and heroes. Philosophers debate the nature of justice under shaded porticos. Citizens exercise their democratic rights, voting on matters of war and peace. And right there, in the shadow of the Parthenon, human beings are being sold like cattle. The slave market operates with the same casual efficiency as the fish market next door. Potential buyers examine merchandise, and that's exactly what people like Alexios are. Merchandise. Checking teeth, feeling muscle tone, inspecting for diseases or defects. The auctioneer's voice carries across the square. Strong Thracian boy, good for mining. Educated Syrian girl, can read and write. Scythian warrior, broken but still useful for heavy labor. Alexios has been through this process. He remembers the hands that grabbed and prodded, the voices that discussed his worth in drachmas and obols. A healthy young male like himself might sell for anywhere from 200 to 500 drachmas, roughly equivalent to 6 months' wages for a skilled craftsman. He was expensive. His master reminds him of this fact whenever he displeases him. But here's what the philosophers debating justice 50 feet away don't want to acknowledge. This system they've created requires a constant supply of fresh human misery. The silver mines of Laurion, which fund Athens' golden age, consume slaves like a furnace consumes wood. The average life expectancy of a mining slave is less than 3 years. As Alexios follows his master through the agora, he notices something that took him months to understand when he first arrived. The way free citizens look at him, or rather, the way they don't look at him. To them, he's not a person. He's a tool that happens to be made of flesh and bone instead of bronze and iron. Aristotle himself, the great philosopher, the teacher of Alexander the Great, wrote that some people are slaves by nature, lacking the rational capacity to govern themselves. He called slaves living tools and animate instruments. This isn't just casual cruelty. This is systematic, philosophical dehumanization. The greatest minds of the ancient world constructed elaborate intellectual frameworks to justify treating human beings like objects. They had to, because deep down, they knew that what they were doing was monstrous. Cleomenes leads Alexios into a symposium, one of those famous Greek drinking parties where educated men recline on couches, discuss philosophy, and celebrate the heights of human civilization. Alexios stands in the corner, silent and invisible, holding a wine jug that's almost as heavy as he is. The conversation tonight is about virtue, about honor, about what it means to live a good life. The same men who are debating the nature of human dignity will, in a few hours, use Alexios for their entertainment. And I don't just mean serving wine. This is where Alexios' story gets darker. And I need you to understand something. I'm not telling you this to shock you or to satisfy some morbid curiosity. I'm telling you this because it happened. It happened to thousands of young men just like Alexios, and pretending it didn't happen dishonors their memory. Male slaves in ancient Greece, particularly young ones, served multiple functions for their masters. They were servants, yes, status symbols, certainly, but they were also what modern psychologists would recognize as victims of systematic sexual abuse. The Greeks had a concept called paiderastia, literally boy love, which they romanticized as an educational relationship between an older man and a younger one. But when that younger person is property, when they can't say no, when resistance means torture or death, there's nothing romantic about it. It's sexual violence. Systematic, institutionalized sexual violence. Alexios learned this on his third night in Athens. His master's friends had been drinking. They were discussing philosophy, as they always did. The nature of beauty, the pursuit of wisdom, the importance of virtue. Then one of them noticed Alexios standing in the corner. "Cleomenes," he said, his words slurred with wine. "Your new boy is quite beautiful. Very educational." The laughter that followed still echoes in Alexios' nightmares. The wine flows freely, the laughter grows louder, and Alexios knows what comes next. What follows cannot be spoken in full. Some horrors demand their own silence. But know this, the night stretched endlessly toward a dawn that would not come. Know that crimson stained the marble floors. Know that when Alexios' voice broke the darkness, they silenced him with words sharper than any blade. Property does not speak. Property does not weep. Property has no rights to break. And I can tell you that this wasn't unusual. This wasn't some aberrant behavior by particularly cruel individuals. This was Tuesday night in the greatest democracy the world had ever known. How does someone like Alexios survive something like this? How does a 15-year-old boy maintain his sanity in a world designed to destroy his humanity? He learns to disappear inside his own mind. He creates a small, secret place where they can't reach him, where he's still Alexios from Messenia, where his mother is still alive, where the olive trees still grow in neat rows behind his family's house. He learns to read the signs. When his master's jaw tightens in a particular way, Alexios knows to make himself invisible. When Cleomenes' friends arrive with that specific gleam in their eyes, he knows what's coming. Survival becomes a complex mathematics of anticipation and avoidance. Alexios also learns that resistance comes in small forms. He works slowly when no one is watching. He accidentally breaks expensive pottery. He develops a persistent cough that makes him less appealing for certain activities. These tiny acts of defiance are the only way he can maintain any sense of agency in a world that has stripped him of everything else. But perhaps most importantly, Alexios learns to find humanity in unexpected places. The other slaves become his family. They share food when they can, tend each other's wounds, whisper stories of home in languages their masters don't understand, creating a shadow community of the dispossessed, bound by shared trauma and stubborn hope. There's a girl named Thalia who works in the kitchen. She's from Thrace, captured in the same kind of raid that took Alexios. Sometimes when the masters are asleep, they sit together in the courtyard and remember what it felt like to be human. She teaches him words in her language. He teaches her songs from Messenia. These moments are precious beyond measure because they remind Alexios that he still exists. But let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Because Alexios's individual suffering, as profound as it is just one small gear in a massive economic machine built on human misery. The Athenian economy during the 5th century BCE was booming. The Parthenon was under construction. The navy was the most powerful in the Mediterranean. Art, literature, and philosophy were flourishing. And all of it, every marble column, bronze statue, philosophical treatise, was made possible by slave labor. The silver mines of Laurion, which provided the raw material for Athenian currency, employed an estimated 20,000 to 30,000 slaves at their peak. These men worked in tunnels so narrow they had to crawl on their bellies, breathing poisonous fumes that burned their lungs, rarely seeing sunlight. Their bodies became living torches, consumed by the very silver that would mint the coins, celebrating Athenian glory. The mortality rate was so high that the mines required a constant influx of new slaves just to maintain production levels. In the households of the wealthy, slaves performed every conceivable task. They cooked, cleaned, raised children, managed finances, and provided sexual services. Some estimates suggest that wealthy Athenian families owned between 50 to 100 slaves each. Even middle-class citizens typically owned at least one or two. This wasn't just about luxury or convenience, it was about the fundamental structure of Greek society. Free citizens could participate in democracy, pursue philosophy, and create art precisely because slaves were doing all the actual work. The golden age of Athens was built on a foundation of human bondage. Sometimes, late at night, Alexios dreams about escape. He sees himself slipping through Athens' dark streets toward the harbor, toward freedom. But even in his dreams, the chains follow him. Professional slave catchers prowl the countryside with hunting dogs. Flogging awaits runaways. And beyond Athens, more masters, more chains. Even his dreams are cages. Here lies the most maddening truth of all. The same minds that conceived democracy also perfected human bondage. While Plato wrote of justice, 5 slaves served in his household. While Aristotle theorized about human flourishing, he declared that boys like Alexios were born to be owned. This wasn't ignorance. This was deliberate blindness. They constructed elaborate philosophies to justify the unjustifiable, proclaiming that Alexios' suffering wasn't just acceptable, but necessary for civilization itself. But here's what should haunt you. Alexios never really died. He exists today in the hands that sewed your clothes, in the children who mined the metals in your phone, in the workers who picked your food. The chains are different now. Debt, desperation, legal invisibility, but the equation remains unchanged. Our comfort still rests on someone else's suffering. We've simply learned to build longer distances between ourselves and the screams. What became of Alexios from Messenia? History doesn't record the deaths of property. No monuments mark where he fell. No epitaphs remember his name. If fortune smiled, he lived to 25, stealing moments of humanity with Thalia in darkened courtyards. If fortune turned away, and the odds say it did, he died as so many others, in the mines, from disease, from despair. His death was noted only in a ledger, recorded as an economic loss, the cost of replacement, nothing more. I have told you Alexios' story because the dead deserve witnesses, because his humanity mattered, even when the world declared it didn't, because in understanding how Athens built paradise on the backs of children, we might finally see the chains that still bind souls in our own time. 1,500 years have passed since Alexios last drew breath, yet his story echoes in every sweatshop, every field, every mine where human dignity is traded for convenience. The boy who woke to the crack of a whip still wakes somewhere today. The only question is whether we'll keep looking away.